So the datasheet of the Invader ATV has appeared on the internet. It's looking pretty strong, and it looks like multi-meltas might be getting a massive buff. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy-focused 40k channel, where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. It seems that there have been some new leaks for the Space Marines, much in the same fashion as the Canoptic Doomstalker and the Locust Heavy Destroyer this morning. They look like they might be datasheets that are coming out alongside the actual model boxes that these miniatures are sold in. Today we'll focus on the Invader ATV, and I'll hopefully have a video out on the Firestrike Servo Turret tomorrow. In this video we'll take a look over the Invader ATV's datasheet, talk about some potential rule synergies with it, and then talk briefly about the implications of multi-shot multi-melters. So as I said, these datasheets appear to be from the box set that these are sold in, I think. They certainly don't look like they're actually coming from the core Codex Space Marines or anything. The datasheets are missing certain key features, such as special rules like Angels of Death for example, much in the same way that the Necron datasheets were missing basic things like reanimation protocols. So I would take all of this with a pinch of salt, as either the rules or points might change in the new codex, but it does mean that we can get a general idea of its abilities. The Invader ATV squad is a fast attack choice for Codex Space Marines. It's power level 4 or 80 points, though it will cost you 5 points extra if you want to take the multi-melter. You can field them in squad sizes of between 1 to 3, which means that you can actually be putting a very hefty unit of these guys down on the board. You could have 255 points worth of invaders, which is going to be a bit of a pain to shift for the opponent, as that's 24 toughness 5 wounds right there. Each model has a 14-inch movement, weapon skill and ballistic skill 3+, strength 4, toughness 5, 8 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 7, and a 3+ save. This guy basically has the same relationship as the attack bike does to the standard bike squad, compared with the new Space Marine Outriders. Basically double the wounds and attacks, and packing a big heavy weapon on its back. I think 8 wounds is pretty decent at 80 points, 10 points per wound is no bad thing on a Space Marine toughness 5 unit, and it means that really enemies are going to be wanting to fire anti-tank weapons at this, not just anti-infantry ones. It's very fast, just like normal bikers, which means it's going to be able to get where it needs to go, and it also has at least some close combat potential, having 4 attacks from the 2 Primaris riders. If you notice down in the keyword section, it also has the biker keyword instead of the vehicle one. Now this has some positives and negatives, the main negative being that you're not going to be able to fire this thing in close combat. It certainly makes it a potential weakness for these guys getting locked up by something big and tanky. The biker keyword does have some interesting synergies though, such as certain stratagems or special rules that work in certain Space Marine chapters. Now its armaments are quite interesting. Each Invader ATV packs either an Onslaught Gatling cannon or multi-melter, and it also has twin auto bolt rifles on the front. One of the most interesting things about the datasheet in my mind is that both of these weapons have been significantly buffed. The Onslaught Gatling cannon, rather than being 6 shots at strength 5 AP-1, is now 8 shots at the same profile. Certainly a small but significant increase. As I mentioned previously, the multi-melter is particularly interesting. It appears to have got buffed in 2 different ways. Both it is heavy 2 rather than heavy 1 now, and also the melter rule appears to have changed, the one that takes into effect when you're up close within 12 inches. Rather than being roll 2 dice and pick the highest, it's now roll d6 and add 2 to it, which is significantly better compared with previously. To be honest, if these guns hadn't been as buffed as they were, I really don't think that the ATV would have been taken very much. Having a single multi-melter shot in 8th edition 40k really doesn't get you all that far, and to me the anti-infantry version still didn't seem great without those extra shots. Now that we've seen these though, it really does look fairly fearsome. On average per turn, the anti-infantry build will kill around 5 guardsmen, and the multi-melter will do around 3 wounds to vehicles just for its single weapon, unbuffed, and that increases to a pretty whopping 4.5 wounds on average when you're within 12 inches. I also quite like the way that this guy has the auto bolt rifles, not the standard ones that the standard bikers pack. Getting 6 shots at 24 inches is no joke at all, and it certainly will add to your anti-infantry firepower. In terms of synergies in-game, I think it's pretty much guaranteed that Dark Angels will get Raven Wing on this, as it's very clearly supposed to be another biker release to go alongside the Outriders, and that could allow some interesting things with all of their synergies for Raven Wing units, with things like Talon Masters, various stratagems, and relics and things. Also getting access to Jink, which you can use on a stratagem, is not a bad thing either. I'm sure the White Scars could find a decent home for this as well. They have Born in the Saddle, which will allow it to advance and still shoot its weapons, and I do suspect that when we get the full Codex version of this, it probably will get Turbo Boost, much like the attack bike had. That could also be combined with Skilled Riders, which if it remains in its current form, would give you a 3+ invul save. Could make a unit of 3 of these guys very hard to remove, particularly if they're on an objective or something. I think Ultramarines could be interesting. This thing's melee profile isn't insignificant, with 5 attacks on the charge with shock assaults, and ultramarines could mean that you could be able to blaze away in the shooting phase, then deal some damage in close combat, then jump back out again if needed, and continue to fire with your guns. I also think that the inclusion of auto bolt rifles on this could be very good for Deathwatch, as it gives them a way to get some special issue ammunition onto this fairly durable platform. In terms of fielding them in game, as 9th is really looking like an addition where fast durable units scoring objectives seem to be good. I think that there is room for both single ones of these jumping onto objectives and providing a bit of incidental firepower, and also the big unit of 3 of them that we talked about, which could both be very durable and could also be good for stacking offensive buffs and things, say giving them a +1 to hit with a Chaplain's Litany for example. In game, having decent movement and decent firepower is a good combo. You could afford to deploy these quite far back in your deployment zone and then use that very good movement to get them in range turn 1, hopefully giving you a turn of having less enemy firepower to deal with. It does seem that their biggest and most obvious weakness is being tagged in melee themselves, maybe by something like an enemy transport that doesn't really care about their attacks, though I still think that a unit of 3 of them could potentially quite easily bully some light infantry and maybe finish off a depleted enemy unit after they've fired their guns. Despite the significant melter buff, if that really is farmed out to things like land speeders and attack bikes, then it still might be that we see those being used more than the Invader ATV. A standard land speeder with a multi-melter will be a lot more viable looking, and it does have the advantage of costing 15 points less than this thing. It would lose 2 wounds, but gain a bit of movement, the fly special rule, and also be a vehicle, meaning that it could fire in close combat if needed. Again, attack bikes, if they get the multi-melters, could actually have more firepower than these. For approximately the same points, you'd be getting 3 melter shots out of them rather than 2. Fairly equivocal bolter shots, but a couple of less wounds of durability. So while the ATV is looking strong, I'm not necessarily sure it's going to outcompete either the land speeder or the attack bike. I guess only time will tell, and we do have to see the full picture. Finally, I just wanted to talk a bit more about the multi-melter change itself, which I know is still not a 100% guaranteed thing, but it does kind of make a fair bit of sense the way that things have been pointed in 9th. In general, throughout 8th edition, they were usually a suboptimal choice on most units, aside from certain lists of battle units or salamanders. Typically, if you could get things like las cannons, then it was just a better idea to go with them. That made me think it was very weird when in 9th edition, the multi-melters went up to cost even more than las cannons do. I mean, why would you pay 25 points for a multi-melter on a vehicle that's got shorter range and is typically going to do worse against toughness 8 vehicles as well? This one could well be an explanation for it, and as it just has better raw damage output, I could easily see multi-melters going to be the preferred option. You're basically giving up the premium cost of range that las cannons get for much increased damage power. The D6 plus 2 is far better than the old melter rule. When you had 2 dice and picked the highest, you typically get an average of around about 4.5, and now that's up to 5.5 now. So compared with multi-melters within melter range previously, multi-melters appear to have got 2.4 times more efficient. Obviously that is presuming you're firing at a multi-wound target that's going to eat as much damage as you can throw at it. If you do happen to roll a 6 with a melter now, then you could get a massive 8 wounds, so vehicles just won't be anywhere near as secure as they were before. I do find that a bit peculiar that it would crop up on this Invader ATV though, and not the new Eradicators. I'm going to be interested to see whether or not that's just the standard melter rule from now on, and it'll go on across all factions, or whether that's going to be something specific to multi-melters. Anyway, if melters are going to get stronger, then it's very good news for land speeders and attack bikes, as we've said. Sisters of battle like immolators and retributors will certainly like it. Sponsons on guard tanks will have a new lease of life, and maybe we'll finally have a reason to take the multi-melter on them now. And hopefully it might mean that the Devil Dog's melter cannon is buffed, seeing as it would only be roughly on par with their multi-melter on its own now. Salamanders players will no doubt be very happy, as will any other Imperial vehicle that can happen to stick in multi-melter on it, whether that's a Land Raider Crusader, or perhaps those new Gladiator Valiants. If 8th was more of an addition of plasma weapons, then perhaps melter is going to be king in 9th. So let me know your thoughts and ideas on the datasheet and the changes down in the comments below. On paper at least, they look like a very decently usable unit. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. We'll be taking a look at that Firestrike servo turret tomorrow. And if you've been enjoying all the content on the channel, then I'd just like to mention that I do have a Patreon page, which is down in the video description below. The channel's Patreon is how I can spend so much time making all of these videos, so if you are watching a lot, then any support is massively appreciated. Channel Patrons get to see a new video early each week. There are regular polls to see what sort of videos come next on the channel, and it also gets you automatic entry into the monthly prize giveaway. If any of that sounds good, or you'd just like to help support the channel, then the link is down in the video description below. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.